I really wanted to record a brief video to send you all Christmas greetings and as a very inadequate thank you for the vast number of cards, messages of support and offers of help Janet and I received during my recent illness. The love of our family, friends and church family has been amazing and we are deeply grateful to you all. So to everyone who sent your love and prayers, which we weren't able to acknowledge at the time, a heartfelt thank you from Janet and myself. Most of you will know by now what happened back in November, but very briefly, I'd been having mild chest pain for just a few days, dialed 111 and was admitted to the RUH in Bath in the early hours of Remembrance Sunday morning. Things escalated over the coming week, culminated in me being blue lighted to the Bristol Heart Institute on the following Sunday, Christ the King. Next morning, I discovered I would be having a double bypass operation that afternoon, and 6 days later, fittingly Advent Sunday, I came home to begin the recovery. Those first few days back home, I had plenty of time to reflect on what had just happened and soon realised that it wasn't just one story, but two. The first is a very ordinary human story of illness, hospital, and thankfully in my case, successful surgery. Experiences shared by thousands every day. Part of that story is the extraordinary expertise humanity has gained in performing procedures which cure conditions that previously would have been fatal. Add to that the ability of human beings to create and run something as complex as a modern acute hospital, and I was in awe of everything that I experienced at both Bath and Bristol during those 2 weeks. Thankfully, none of the NHS's current problems impinged on my care in any way. Indeed, I've nothing but praise for the medical and nursing care I received at both hospitals. I even enjoyed some of the meals, notably lasagna, peas, carrots, mashed potato and gravy. But alongside that human story runs another story of God present and active at every turn. I freely admit to often being prone to anxiety, but I was remarkably peaceful throughout those dramatic 2 weeks. And at key moments, things happened that were nothing short of miraculous. After my first 24 hours in RUH, I was discharged to wait for an appointment for a CT scan. Indeed, I was waiting in the discharge lounge for my medication to arrive when a doctor literally came running in to say that the last slot of the day on the CT scanner had unexpectedly become available and I could have the scan there and then. The result of that saw me swiftly readmitted the following day for an ultrasound and then an angiogram, which happened over the next few days. I was told my proposed treatment hung in the balance between stenting, a relatively quick and easy procedure, and bypass surgery, much more invasive, but ultimately probably a better solution in my condition. The doctor asked if I had strong feelings either way, and to my amazement, I heard my risk-averse, mildly hypochondriac self say, "I'd like the bypass, I think." Well, the next miracle, which didn't seem like it at the time, was a deterioration of my condition on the middle Sunday, leading to that rapid transfer to Bristol. This actually worked in my favour because next morning I awoke nil by mouth and was informed I was going to have the operation that very afternoon. Given that people can wait months for bypass surgery, I feel so blessed and even a little guilty that mine came so incredibly quickly. There was barely time to think, let alone worry about what was about to happen. So it's been a very ordinary human story of what is now, amazingly, a relatively routine procedure with a very high success rate. But alongside that, a remarkable story of God's incredible kindness and love at every stage. When I was studying theology many years ago, I learnt a doctrine from the early years of the Christian Church which appealed to me greatly: the doctrine of incarnation. This states that in Jesus God became fully human, like you and me, and that from that moment on Jesus was and is 100% God and 100% man. Incarnation literally means enfleshment, from the same root as chili con carne. Bluntly, God became red meat like you and me. Apologies, I've been thinking a lot about anatomy and how the heart pumps blood around the human body recently. The miracle of incarnation is what Christmas is all about. And it means that the story of Jesus is really two stories as well. A very human story about a baby coming into the world, screaming and messy like you and me, living a completely relatable human life, raised in an obscure backwater, achieving notoriety as an itinerant preacher and healer, and finally incurring the wrath of the authorities and paying the ultimate price for the stance he took. He experienced the full range of human emotion, friendship, laughter, tears, hope and fear, just as we do. He was 100% a flesh and blood human being, like us. But alongside that human story, those who knew him well and those who followed quickly recognized a second divine story. What kind of man is this? People were asking. His character, so gentle yet so fearless. They'd never met anyone like him. And the wisdom of his words. How could an uneducated artisan ever have gained such a profound understanding of the human condition and God's word? And the miracles, surely they were of a different order to anything the great heroes of the Old Testament had done. And the way he met death head on, calm in his faith in his Father's will. And finally, that rumour, well, more than a rumour, that his story hadn't ended there. All this convinced Jesus' early followers and his friends, and has convinced people ever since that they'd encountered divinity in human form. 100% God and 100% man. Well, it's an elegant theory, but does it matter? Yes, it does, because that's the only way God could save us. He needed to completely identify with us, to enter fully into our human condition in order to redeem it. But at the same time, only God could save us. It had to be God hanging on that cross, not just a remarkable human being. Well, that concept of incarnation really gripped me as a 20-something theology student as I began to realise what it meant for me. When Jesus gets involved in our lives, in our very ordinary human stories, they don't remain merely human. They become part of his divine story. Our human stuff, however gritty, isn't just human anymore. It's the place where God is working and present, visibly or secretly, as in the stable at Bethlehem. I know many of you are dealing with much more difficult things than I've been through this Christmas. But I pray that incarnation principle, so wonderfully at work in Jesus' birth, will be at work in your experience this Christmas, visibly or invisibly, and will become an unexpected spring of hope and joy, whatever you're going through. I feel as if I've experienced something of that miracle of incarnation afresh this year in my very human story of sickness and recovery, laced with God's kindness at every turn. And the deep gratitude I feel to him, the healthcare services, and all of you is tinged with a sense of wonder at the miracle of Christmas. God with us, God one of us, God saving us. Thanks be to God. So it just remains to say thank you again for all your love and prayers. I'm doing well and hope to be back with you all before too long. Have a happy and a holy Christmas, and God bless you in the coming year.